And we are live again. Thanks everyone for joining us today. My name is Gina with Social Connect at White Glove, and I'm here today to talk with Ken New with Pinnacle Financial Wealth Management. Ken, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Yeah, I was just in your side of the town last week. Went to Florida, and my kids did not want to leave.
Absolutely, I can understand why. It's a great state.
So thank you so much for joining me on a Facebook Live. For everyone watching, we will be discussing tax law changes. And I'm ready to get started. So
great.
Ken, it seems like every month new headlines about the economy, taxes, and now the government needs to raise the debt limit to pay the bills. What's going on with all of this?
Yeah, that's very live in the news right now. There's no question about that. Let me give some perspective before I answer that question. These are historic times in our country, and so the question is that why is all this happening? And so because it's such a historic time, and that if you look back at our history, we've never been faced with these kinds of issues before, never happened on planet Earth before.
Yeah.
And these aren't single situations. This is it's a condition, kind of a situation that we find ourselves in, and it's getting bigger every day. And it affects everyone. In fact, it's so dramatic. I mean, it's going to affect our generations for the next 30 or 40 years. And what's potentially dangerous about it is that we really have no experience dealing with these situations that we have. As individuals, as a nation, we are absolutely radically unprepared for what it is that we're dealing with. It's like a freight train coming down the track, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. And so what is this situation? We're thinking in our mind, well, what is he talking about? Well, I'm talking about retirement. And I think that answer surprises people. But here's the thing about it, is that for the first time in our nation, the largest born generation is getting into retirement or will be entering retirement over the next 15 years. And that will represent 70 million people living in retirement, which means that we have 70 million people who are living off of their nest eggs and that are not part of that working world that's out there. Now, having said that, then, this group of people, and this is the perspective, this group of people, 70 million people, represent more than the cumulative history of all the retirees in the history of our country. And that is just profound. That is an amazing thing. And yet we're living 20, 30 years in retirement. And so how do we make that happen? Well, just to add a little bit more to it, back in 1934, Franklin Roosevelt signed into law the Social Security Act and set the retirement age at 65 years. At that time, the life expectancy was 62 years of age. Now that sounds amazing, but that's what it was back in those days, 62 years. And so now, of course, we know that has dramatically changed today. And this is all happening at the same time when Social Security and Medicare are sinking deeper and deeper into an unfunded hole. And so this all relates back to those questions about the debt ceiling and tax law changes and things of that nature. And I'm saying these things so that folks will understand the truth. They'll understand what's going on and why is this consistently happening, the raising of the debt ceiling and so on, and protect ourselves, to be aware of that and all the implications such as inflation and other things that will contribute to that. So thanks for letting me kind of open with that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So you keep saying raise the debt ceiling. What does the whole raise the debt ceiling mean exactly?
Well, first of all, let's kind of give some perspective to that. Right now, as a country, we have $28.5 trillion in debt. That's an amazing number. It used to be we talk about trillion like it was not really even a real number, and it's real and it's big and it has a lot of implication. But what it means is that, first of all, it's important, I will say, to raise the debt ceiling. Why? Because we need to pay our bills as a country. Okay? Yeah. We had a time back in 2011 when we didn't do that. And and it creates all kinds of avoidable hardships in the financial world, in the economic world. So we want to avoid that. But what happens with the debt ceiling is that Congress must raise the federal borrowing limit, and that's the debt ceiling. That's what we're talking about. And they need to do that just to pay the bills. Yeah, that's the basic part of it. The limit is the amount of money that can be borrowed. Okay, so they're either going to raise that, or formally they'll just suspend the ceiling so that there's additional borrowing that can happen.
Okay, so does raising the limit mean the government can spend on whatever they want? How does that work? Because it seems like this has happened before. And does the government ever actually make enough money to not have to borrow more?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. And I'll relate to that last one. Do we make enough money? Because that's kind of in the Build Back Better law, part of that $3.5 trillion. So I'll end with that one, but I'll give some perspective really with your other questions. Okay, so a vote to raise the debt ceiling or suspend that debt ceiling doesn't give the right to do any new spending. So that's important. So it's not like an open checkbook, spend it the way you want or any of that. That's not the case. But what it does do is it essentially allows the Treasury then to raise enough money to pay the expenses that have already been authorized. Okay, so there are some automatic spending that's important. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. All right, so those are important bills. Everybody wants to get their Social Security check and so on. So those kinds of things are important. And about a third of it does authorize some annual appropriations. All right, so in other words, some discretionary spending that can happen along those lines. So that is the case, yes. Now, the last thing that you asked really is, do we ever actually make enough money? And so here's where the ping pong debates are going on really in Congress now, and there's posturing about the Biden tax law changes. And, a couple months back, we had a nice presentation on the infrastructure bill and what's going on with that, and actually what's in it. And then came along the idea that, okay, there wasn't enough votes to pass that. So we really wanted to go through this process called reconciliation. So that's budget reconciliation. So it's another kind of federal strategy, if you will, politically to combine a couple of bills. So right now, it's the idea that we could combine the infrastructure bill with Build Back Better bill, the $3.5 trillion, and other related kinds of ideas there tax-wise. And what's interesting about it is that the question comes up, well, how do we pay for it? And how much new debt is there? And so very often we'll look to see what the sound bites are and see what's in the news and so on. And as many of us know, the lady Jen Psaki, who is the press secretary for the Biden administration, typically has to take those questions. And look, she's getting slammed, as well as President Biden is getting slammed about the idea that, this is a zero cost. The net cost is zero, is what they're saying. And it's $3.5 trillion. So on the flip side of that, there's many folks that are saying that's more like a $5 trillion bill. And that's another talk, because we're a couple weeks away from getting these debates out of the way, and we'll see how it settles out. These are big, big numbers. So rightfully so, they should take their time and kind of work through it. But, here's the thing is, no one's buying that zero cost thing. And here's the reason, because it's just not true. It just won't happen that way. We're really not getting any clarity. The idea is that the corporations and the wealthy people will pay for it. Okay, so middle class America won't pay for it is what's being inferred here. But on top of that, they're also saying it won't include any additional national debt. Well, we just had that conversation. We're right in the middle of raising the debt ceiling or suspending the debt ceiling. So we're suspicious about that. And really, the final point is just the answers we get. When Jen Psaki is asked this, and it was just yesterday, she was asked again, what is the cost of this bill? What can we look forward to in the bill? And her answer is a single word: zero. So then the follow-up question is, well, why should we believe you? And the answer is a 3-word sentence. It says, because it won't. Well, no one's buying that. Those
Yeah.
aren't answers. We need substance, and I think it's great that we're following the story, and we'll do a follow-up on it, for sure.
That would be great. Yeah. So thank you so much, Ken. Thank you so much for joining me and keeping, the information going. That is what is amazing. So
the story continues, and I get feedback from folks. I mean, they'll call, they'll and invite the calls. Call my office 321-454-3623. Call. I'd love to talk to people, give them some perspective on what's going on. Just to add another piece to it that we may talk about in the future. But look, the reports are out. We're looking at Medicare right now, and the independent report will tell us that its funding is at zero in just 5 more years.
Yeah.
So there's no more kicking the can down the street. It absolutely, and that's because of the size of the amount of people that are going to be needing that program. And so, those numbers are out. I know there's a lot of questions about Social Security. I get them all the time. Call my office. I'm happy to talk to folks about that, and even meet with them and go through the whole conversation about what's going on here. But more importantly, what does it mean to a retiree today?
Right.
And, I think one of the dangers is what it means to a retiree today is inflation. And this idea, the narrative out there that when inflation it's temporary, it'll go away. I don't buy that. And I would suspect that we really want to be very mindful of that, along with tax law changes for sure. So there you have it.
It's a petrifying topic, but it's reality. So once again, I appreciate it. And for everyone watching, like Ken said, reach out. He is so informative, so educational. So I greatly appreciate you taking the time and educating all of us. I did link your Calendly link and website above. Everyone click on it, get a hold of Ken. He would be more than happy to walk you through and talk you through on this. Jenny did comment on Facebook and she said, everyone needs to hear this information right now. Thank you, Ken. And I 1000% agree with Jenny.
Well, happy to be here. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to people. Till next time.
We'll be back.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for watching.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye, Ken.